Thanks everyone for your patience as we kind of gathered our quorum, but we're here today, and in a few minutes the Alderwoman from the 28th is chairing a committee across the hall, so she may well be leaving. I guess we should start by calling the meeting to order. I'm sorry, always light on procedure. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Bosley. Alderman Kennedy.
Here.
Alderman Conway.
Present.
Alderwoman Cruzen.
Here.
Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Davis.
Present.
Alderman French.
Present.
Alderman Carter. Alderman Coatar.
Here.
Alderwoman Spencer.
Present.
Alderwoman Green.
Present.
Chairman Roddy.
Present.
We have 9 present and we have a quorum.
Great. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We had 2 bills to be heard today. The first one, Board Bill 100 by the Alderman from the 7th. He's asked that we hold that for a while. So we will not take that up, and that was not advertised, was it? So there's no need to have a public hearing or anything on that. Is that correct? Or? Okay. 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 So on Board Bill number 136, which is the annual block grant bill, the intent is that we never try to, since I've been chairman, our hope is not to pass this out one hearing. The idea would be is that we would go ahead and get an overview, and Madam Acting Director, or winners are next. We had previously discussed you coming back in what, 2 weeks? Is it?
It's next week, actually.
Next week. Okay. So the goal would be is that any concerns we have, we would raise them today, get a chance to get an overview of what's going on, and that will give us an opportunity, a week opportunity to kind of give the Madam Director an opportunity to respond to any concerns that are raised today, and we want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to reflect on this, and so that's why we try to go ahead and schedule that for 2 meetings. So we are not anticipating taking a vote, but we wanted to make sure that we had a pretty broad reflection of our whole board here before we started the hearing, so that's why we're waiting. I have learned in the last year or two that it's very challenging to go ahead and use block grant money given the set of strings that are associated with it. I think all of us know that some years ago it was a much different environment, and we were funding our cubdos with these, and those days are gone, so I know there's, I guess, less interest on this. But I have been discussing with the current executive director and her predecessor a couple things that I would like to see, the block grant kind of begin addressing. One of those is transportation, and so we've had an ongoing conversation, and so I'm asking her to, begin thinking about what we need to do to use block grant money to make transportation more affordable. And so I've asked her to address that today. The commercial district program, which has been a subject of some criticism by, I think, quite a few aldermen, I've asked her to address that specifically. And then as a result of much of the conversation that arose out of the $15 hour minimum wage effort, we've learned about earned income tax credits. The minimum wage is, as I'm sure everyone is aware of, is being litigated. So I've asked her to begin thinking about and researching some best practices on more fully utilizing earned income tax credits, and if there might be some pilot programs that we could work with here. So those were the 3 topics that I've asked her to begin addressing that probably aren't going to be reflected in our allocation today. But I guess I wanted to begin the discussion, get committee reaction to those initiatives, and then hopefully spend this next year preparing ourselves to do something next year with some of the block grant money. So with that, Madam Director, why don't you just walk us through? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Roddy and members of the HUD's committee for allowing us an opportunity to present on our board bill, Board Bill 136. It includes CDBG, Home, ESG, and HAPWA, but we are here today to talk specifically about Exhibit A, which is the CDBG and home recommendations from CDA. Alderman Roddy gave a really good overview of the HUD required changes, so I won't spend much time on that. But we'll also review the consolidated plan process in reference to the two initiatives that Alderman Roddy mentioned, EITC and transportation. We'll review the funding process that we went through for this year's funding cycle. Paul Warner of my staff will go over a summary of the new programs included on Exhibit A, and then Bill Roddy will come up with an overview of the housing programs. So beginning in 2012 and ramping up in 2013, we made a drastic change to the way the city allocated HUD dollars. We're still charged with implementing those activities. And the reason for change is to really ensure that the HUD dollars are being spent in a compliant way and in accordance with federal rules. The city was at risk if we had failed to implement the changes and continue with the changes, excuse me. And by that means that we would have to repay any funds that weren't in compliance and repay those from non-federal funds. So we've been working really, really hard at CDA to ensure that we're managing the program in accordance with the way HUD intended. So when HUD came in, they had really three goals for us. One is to revamp our RFP process, which we're here to talk about today. Another is to help the city navigate through the changes, and then also to complete a market value analysis, which they also did. Excuse me. In addition to the changes that HUD made, in 2013, CDA continues to enhance our programs to make sure that we're funding awards in a very transparent and competitive way. We've enhanced our use of the website, social media. If you go on our website, you'll actually see every funding cycle since the change and transition and how we handled that, including who we recommended. We've also instituted nonprofit capacity building workshops, one for organizations who are funded with CDBG dollars, but organizations who would like to be funded with CDBG dollars. Excuse me. We also instituted a grants management system over the last year. The first phase was to allow organizations to apply online and to allow raters to rate online. We also this year will allow organizations to report programmatically and financially online as well. We've significantly enhanced our citizen participation process. It's a work in progress, but we're using social media now to publicize events. We post in the St. Louis American and the Post-Dispatch, and we use our CDBG mailing list. Alderman Roddy wanted me to talk a little bit about two initiatives, transportation and EITC. And I want to talk about those in reference to the consolidated plan, because that's our guide for 5 years. And for an activity to be eligible, it has to be listed in the consolidated plan. Excuse me. And while HUD expects that the consolidated plan be substantially the same throughout the year, they understand that changes could be needed. And when we amend that consolidated plan, excuse me, we have to actually go through the citizen participation process, which also includes posting in the paper, having a public hearing, and then presenting it to HUD. So in context of, excuse me, the two initiatives that Alderman Roddy addressed, I went through the consolidated plan to see exactly where it's referenced. And what I found, excuse me, what I found was with transportation, it was mentioned throughout the consolidated plan. However, there wasn't a real specific reference to it being a priority. So for us to include that, we would have to go through the substantial amendment process, which is probably the route that we'll take, because it is mentioned throughout, but just not specifically as a priority. With earned income tax credit, it isn't mentioned specifically, but it is a fundable activity. And so it's funded in, under financial counseling, and we've funded that over the last couple of years. Excuse me. With another example being the neighborhood revitalization strategy areas. In our consolidated plan, we identify 5 target corridors and also 2 additional areas. Although it's not in a NRSA at this point, using the substantial amendment process will allow us to do so and to fund any activities under that, including transportation. And what's important to note in all of this is CDA would need a nonprofit partner to facilitate these activities. We don't do a lot of programming except for home repair, and to get these programs funded, including transportation, we'll need capable nonprofit organizations to do so. Any questions on that?
Right. Why don't we pause for a second and I'd like to perhaps we've had some discussions offline, but I want to begin having the committee, because some of the other committee members may have an interest in this. I think they do. You all may be aware that the city applied for a smart city grant, and it was a competitive situation. The idea was to take technologies and enhance our transportation system so that you would end up having cars talking to stoplights and sensors on street lights that would monitor traffic flow, and begin really thinking about you know, the city of the future as driverless cars become more prevalent. And so it was a competitive process, and we applied and did not win. And several cities did, including Kansas City. And you know, we have embarked, I guess, on the early phases of expanding north-south, which 2 years ago, if you would have asked me a year and a half ago, I would have thought that was a wonderful thing. I'm beginning to believe that that's going to be obsolete, that technology will be obsolete before it's deployed because of driverless cars. And I think, you know, if you read the Ferguson report, so much of you know, the challenge in our lower income communities is a result of, in our metropolitan area, the requirement of owning a car, you know, which is an additional $300 to $500 a month, which it's almost impossible to have jobs in St. Louis without a car. And there are so many different components to making, you know, transportation work that I think we need to begin thinking ahead of this. Uber, for example, is now in Pittsburgh test driving driverless cars. There's places throughout Europe now that are using driverless vans, you know, to transport, or driverless shuttles. And so even things like hourly car rentals, we've been experimenting with hourly car rentals throughout the 17th Ward. We'll be deploying and subsidizing some more and some of the more affluent neighborhoods through our taxing districts. But I was thinking about the ability of using, you know, as an example, block grant dollars to subsidize hourly car rentals. And of course, the complexity of lower income neighborhoods, you know, grow considerably because you're going to have an intermediary for people who do not have banking capabilities. So they'll, you know, and I've done a little bit of research. They've had a couple models of this nationally. Ithaca, New York has one as an example. And I really think that, you know, as a region or as a city, if we're going to be competitive, we need to start making these adjustments in anticipation of this driverless car, you know, kind of transportation just in time. And boy, I would love to be able to see us having in several of our lower income neighborhoods a model where we would have, you know, a deeply subsidized, you know, fleet of cars that are available for weekend usage to augment, you know, the weekly usage or the daily usage of mass transit. It's just that we're going to need, what Alana's saying, I guess this is bureaucratic speak, which she had to translate for me, is CDA will not be that entity. So if we want something to kind of manage this fleet, and that's my idea. There may be other ideas out there. Maybe what we start doing is using block grant money to negotiate with Metro to buy subsidized Metro passes or something for people who are qualified based on their filing of earned income tax credits, or, you know, just the whole idea of beginning to leverage some of the block grant money to come up with transportation solutions. And you know, I guess that's my idea of what we should be looking to do with this stuff. you know, that's what I've been kind of asking Alana to help us explore. It's just that we're going to need to try to find some sort of intermediary to act as that non-for-profit if hourly car rentals is something that we want to pursue. But I think we ought to, you know, those are my ideas. I think we ought to begin brainstorming if other people have other ideas about what we can do to make transportation more affordable, which I think was one of the, you know, one of the real important takeaways from the Ferguson Commission study. I don't know if anybody cares to react on that, but I just wanted to kind of share those thoughts. And anybody?
One of the things that I find is a challenge is that most of the ideas that we come up with, even though we believe that they're beneficial to lower income, will not be. One of the main problems we have is the location of those neighborhoods. They are disjointed from the mainstream of our city and county, which means to go to a job where most jobs are. They're so far north or so far south that the connection takes hours. And I'll give you an example. I was driving down the street in one of our neighborhoods south, and I saw one of my constituents walking, and he said, well, Ms. Davis, I gotta hurry. If I don't get to the Grand Center Metrolink up here, to catch the bus to get to the Grand Center and then go downtown. So he's walking 7 blocks to catch the bus. Then when he catches the bus, he goes to the Metrolink, and then the Metrolink takes him downtown. So he starts out 2 hours plus to get to work. And he's just going downtown. He based on his job and income, he can't afford a car. This is not going to happen. Renting a car for a couple hours does almost no good, because usually the grocery store is so far away from those neighborhoods. The doctor's office is so far away from those neighborhoods that it just doesn't work. So if we don't do true public transportation and also augment it with other kinds of transportation that is done by private sector, because we can't do it all. We don't have the money, nor do we have, I think, in various levels, the will. So we're going to really have to think this through, and we have to listen to some of the younger, new, innovative ways that people are trying to provide transportation. I think we have somebody new in town right now. I don't know if he's talked to you yet, but I'll make sure he gets over there. But he has something that's a little bit different from Uber. But his goal, the way he's mapped it out, is to connect these disjointed neighborhoods with on-the-corner transportation. Walk to your corner, you got transportation. And it's supposed to be 24/7. You use your mobile phone, all of that. So I guess what I want to do is, like we have all these incubators for IT, fashion, I think we need a transportation incubator. That might be helpful. Now, that's something you probably can fund. You can, help with that. So that the ideas can be fleshed out, the basics can be put in place, and there's a system to support something being created. So I'm having a really hard time, because I remember how hard it was for me when I first started out and I didn't have a car. And I had to take 2 kids to 2 different schools on the bus, and then catch the bus and go to my job downtown. So, and then catch the bus and go to school at night and catch the bus back home. I spent a lot of my time, and then still trying to figure out all the other things I needed to do with my family in the little bit of time I had left. So I do understand that it's a serious, serious challenge. And even if we do the north-south Metrolink, which needs to be done, there's no ifs and buts about that, it's still all the extra that we need just to get people to these connections. And sometimes you have to go back to where you were. I'm old enough to remember the service car system. The service car system operated within the disadvantaged neighborhoods. It was affordable. and it connected them to the mainstream. And it also provided entrepreneurship for people who normally would not have had it. And they operate as independent contractors with their cars. And so there's a lot of ways that we might be able to make this work. But as the chairman indicated, it's going to take layers of different things. And unfortunately, we don't have a lot of money to address it.
The mathematics of a driverless car, I've been kind of going through it a little bit. We were interested in doing shuttles or circulators, and according to Metro's numbers, about half of, this is probably a year or two old numbers, but to run a shuttle is about a $65 an hour expense, and half of that is for the car gas, or for the vehicle gas and so forth, and the other half is for the driver. What will happen is when the driverless technology emerges, you'll be able to double the coverage of driverless vans over what they're, of driverless buses over what the current level is for the same price. Unfortunately, when you take a look at fixed rail, I'm making this number up, but 80 or 90% of fixed rail cost is the capital cost. And, there's virtually no labor cost in fixed rail. So, the economics are going to really skew towards the driverless car. The biggest challenge, as I understand it, is the first mile and last mile in public transportation. So it's getting to the stop and then getting from the stop, from the stop to where you're going. So it's that first and last mile. And I think that's where most of the innovative solutions are going to be coming from. And I just, I feel very strongly we need to begin thinking about that. And we should, we have a pot of money here that we should be experimenting with. And I don't know what the right thing to do, but perhaps, we can put out an RFP and ask people to come in and solve a problem in one of these neighborhoods or something and throw a couple $100,000 at it or something.
One of our first next steps is to engage the community on this issue and concept. We, in the next couple of weeks, will be retaining a consultant who's going to go out and do engagement and facilitating neighborhood meetings in our NRSA neighborhoods. And transportation, it will be a key discussion point during those meetings to gauge interest and to see what they need transportation for, how close is the grocery store, how are they getting to the grocery store, how are they getting to the rec centers and things like that. We really want to know what the community needs, and that's really our approach with CDBG is first come up with the concept or get a concept from the community, talk to the community and see if that's something they really need and to get their feedback and ideas. And from there, make sure we follow all the HUD rules and then set it as a priority in the substantial amendment process.
All right. Any other comment?
Sure. So first, let me say I appreciate the idea about trying to think outside of the box and figure out better ways to use these funds. I think one of the things that is frustrating to definitely citizens, but many aldermen as well, is that we get this pot of money every year, and in many cases we are just subsidizing city operations or continually funding the same projects over and over and over and over without seeing much transformative change. And so I do support the idea of setting aside a portion of these funds to try to move the needle on some important issues and not just tread water. I'd like to make an information request, if I could. So in previous years, I asked for a breakdown in where these funds go, north, south, central. I think last year we were given a map that showed where the different projects were located. I'd request that again, but
The map in your folder.
But the map, though, let me see it. The way it was given before, it was simple dots for where things were, and what I asked for was more like weighted dots. So if one dot wouldn't equal $100,000 one place and $2,500 in another place. So actually where the dot is bigger. So if If there's a project that's getting 500,000, that's a bigger dot than a project that's getting 10,000.
What's sort of difficult about that request is a lot of the programs we fund now are citywide, and so where that dot may be bigger placed on the map, they're actually servicing kids or servicing elderly people all over the city. So it will be a little hard to interpret, I think, the trueness of the block grant bill that way.
Okay, and maybe for those few projects that are indeed citywide, you have a different symbol, maybe a
Okay.
triangle.
Okay, and
Right.
I think most of ours are citywide, and so we'll put it together, and I'll send you over something. If it's not what you're looking for, we can revise it.
And then another way you can also do it is just as a spreadsheet even, to just show which ones deal with what's north, what's south, what's central, and what's citywide.
Okay.
That's all I have right now.
One of the things that's really important to us at CDA is to make sure that we're including all of the aldermen in the priority and the planning process from the very beginning. I know I send out a list of the priorities early in June. We can have those discussions starting now. If you want to meet with us and go over some ideas that you have, feel free to give me a call. We'll start investigating to make sure that they're eligible as far as CDBG is concerned, but we would love to have conversations at this point with any of you.
So these dots, the numbers on this match the numbers on the dots, so you can actually look up each one.
That's more work on our end.
Well, the Lord gave you a pair of eyes, Alderman.
All right, let's try to get this committee from fighting amongst itself on. Are there any comments on transportation or other things right now before we let the executive director move on?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Now I just want to give a brief review of the 2017 funding process. So HUD always tells us, you know, we're tasking you with doing more with less. That's their key target phrase for us now. And in the handouts I gave you, it shows that we are indeed having to do more with less. 15 years ago, CDA received about $30 million in block grant. Now we're down to about $16 million. In home, the same. It went from $6 million to $2 million, taking a drastic cut in 2012 across the country. And because we have to do more with less, we're looking for our CDA staff as well as our organizations to be efficient, leverage resources, and show and demonstrate capacity. Those are the key targets for us and the key themes. Just a review of the timeline from starting in June to where we are now. In June, we sent out a public notice to citizens via the St. Louis American and the Post. We posted on our website all of the draft priorities, the timeline, and then also we sent to the Board of Aldermen also the draft priorities for comments. We held a public meeting to solicit comments on that process, and we held several trainings throughout the month of June. We really want to make sure our organizations are strong and know how to actually fill out the application. So we had workshops on CDBG financial management, CDBG, designing a CDBG eligible program, and then also on the RFP itself. And what we found is those organizations that attended that workshop actually did better in the application process. The RFP was issued July 5th. It was due to us on August 5th, and then from there we rated and ranked, and then now we're here with the recommendations. CDA received approximately 70 proposals from 50 nonprofit organizations, and we're funding several new programs this year, which Paul will talk about in just a few minutes. But to give a review or a summary of the types of programs that we funded, we are recommending $1.5 million in economic development, 6.8 in housing, 987,000 in youth programs, 120,000 in child care, 342,000 in elderly programs. We're recommending 264,000 in crime prevention, and in fact, we funded every program in crime prevention that we received. We have food access programs that we're funding, health programs for 161,000, and then landlord nuisance and prevention and abatement programs. I'm going to actually call Paul Warner up if there are no questions, who will go over some of the new programs.
I'm sorry, we kind of have a side question here.
Guy is against everything we've ever done.
The
Number 79.
Alderwoman was wondering, the numbers that are on this sheet here, are there dollar figures associated with those numbers so that they can?
It would be on the Exhibit A. So,
We have to go from the map to this.
I'm not sure if I even got one of those.
Different projects.
Oh, it's this. Okay. Okay, so yeah, I guess what it is the issue is the numbers don't translate through.
well, we can take a look at that and work with the graphics department to make sure it's better understood.
This is more of just a contact sheet information, name, location, that kind of stuff.
Yes.
This is the actual budget dollar amount that's being allocated, that's in the board view.
So yeah, we can work on that today and get that out by the end of the week.
Okay. Okay. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, that's all right. Morning. So like Alana said, I'm going to give a brief review of some new programs. The Covenant House Emergency Shelter Program will provide homeless youth with short-term housing.
Can you
Sure.
show us where you're walking through so that we can kind of follow? Is it this exhibit that you're?
Should be in yours. The new program's in your slides. Yeah.
Okay. So you're in this presentation and okay, Covenant House.
Yeah,
And
there
then-
should be-
Now, can you help us tie that together to the dollar amounts that
Sure.
were involved in? Okay.
All right, Covenant House is on the first page of that Exhibit A, and they're receiving $20,000 in block grant. So the Covenant House Emergency Shelter Program will provide homeless youth with short-term housing and comprehensive support services. Services will include mental health, education, and career development, and life skills training. Grace Hill Settlement House is the next one. They're receiving $20,000 in CDBG. Grace Hill Settlement House's after-school program will provide quality recreation, education, and mentoring opportunities to youth K through 5. The program will serve students in the College Hill and Hyde Park neighborhoods enrolled at the Clay or Bryan Hill elementary schools. For now, going over to the second page of the Exhibit A, Humanitry is going to receive proposed to receive $75,000 in CDBG. And their Next Steps Home Offender Reentry Program will provide permanent housing solutions, employment support, and family reunification for offenders reentering society. The program will provide supportive services to ex-offenders approximately 6 months after release, when aftercare upon release is completed. Kingdom House is the next one. They're proposed to receive $20,000. Their Early Childhood Center will provide a quality social, emotional, and academic education to enable children to grow intellectually, socially, emotionally, and physically. The program primarily services low-income families, most of which are headed by single mothers working in school or enrolled in training programs. On to the next slide is the Myrtle Hilliard Davis Comprehensive Health Centers. They're proposed to receive $25,000, and their program will provide primary care, dental, behavioral health, and social services to individuals experiencing homelessness. The program will serve individuals through 4 community health centers in North St. Louis and provide care to individuals regardless of their ability to pay. The North Newstead Association Safety Initiative is the next program, and they're proposed to receive $50,000. That program will implement comprehensive strategies to reduce crime in the Penrose, O'Fallon, and Fairgrounds neighborhoods. Activities will include resident training, community meetings with police, a crime prevention summit, and opportunities to connect ex-offenders with community projects. Project COPE, doing business as Concordance Academy, is the next program, and they're proposed to receive $100,000. That program will provide comprehensive services to incarcerated individuals who are within 6 months of release from Missouri prisons and returning to St. Louis City. Services will include mental health, substance abuse, employment readiness, cognitive, and life skills. The St. Louis Science Center Foundation is the last one on this slide, and they're at the bottom of the page on the exhibit for A2. They're proposed to receive $20,000. St. Louis Science Center Foundation's Youth Exploring Science at the St. Louis Science Center will provide year-round science learning and career and college readiness program for at-risk high school students. The program will use science, technology, engineering, and math to encourage successful futures through career, college, and life skills development. All right, go on to the next page. And now we're on the third page of the exhibit. The Board for Inner City Missions of the United Church of Christ in Metropolitan St. Louis is the next program, and they're proposed to receive $20,000. Their summer youth enrichment program will provide an 8-week summer enrichment camp for low-income youth ages 6 to 12. The curriculum minimizes the risk of becoming involved in or being a victim of crime and provides opportunities to increase academic life and social emotional skills. The Wyman Center is the next agency, and they are proposed to receive $39,000 for the Youth Thrive program. That's the program that's new. They're also listed on there as another one, but that was a previous program. The Wyman Center's Youth Thrive program will provide training to St. Louis Metropolitan Police officers through a nationally recognized Youth Thrive approach to interacting with the community. Through a training focused on trauma-informed positive youth development, officers will develop the skills to work proactively with youth to develop strong relationships and ultimately reduce youth violence in the city of St. Louis. The next one is the Urban League of Metropolitan St. Louis Home Repair Program. They're actually a housing program, so if you look on your exhibit, they're in the next section down under housing on the bottom of the page. They're proposed to receive $100,000. And their home repair program will provide minor home repairs to seniors and disabled individuals living in the city of St. Louis. The next one, if you turn to the fourth page of the exhibit, under economic development at the very bottom of the page is the International Institute of Metropolitan St. Louis. Their microenterprise development will provide loans and business development services to immigrant entrepreneurs. Services will include credit counseling, financial literacy, and training, and they're proposed to receive $50,000. On to the next slide, and if you turn to the fifth page of the exhibit, the T-Rex Building Renovation Project is proposed to receive $300,000, and that project would complete physical improvements to the Lambert Building, which is located at 911 Washington. The improvements will provide for increased capacity to support innovative, entrepreneurial technological companies with affordable space, programming, and events, and critical connections for development and growth. And finally, the last new program is under public facilities. That will be the Tower Grove Neighborhoods Community Development Corporation. They're proposed to receive $50,000, and they will install infrastructure to allow for free access to Wi-Fi and solar charging for mobile devices along South Grand from Arsenal to Chippewa. The project would target public spaces such as bus stops and parks and help people stay in touch with employers and families while providing free access to important information. That's all the new programs. Does anyone have any questions? All right. Now I'll pass it over to Bill Rotzer.
Good morning. I'd like to talk about the housing programs that we fund at CDA. First of all, I want to talk about housing production. And as part of the new system that we had to implement, we established a NOFA, or Notice of Funding Availability process for awarding funding for housing development projects. So the NOFA process was designed to be more equitable funding method, competitive, transparent, and data-driven. We are able to prioritize where CDA funds are used in areas where the public assistance will be most effective. We can identify neighborhood needs better, build upon area strengths, concentrate investment strategy, and leveraging other funds. And then all areas of the city are eligible to receive NOFA awards. So each year, we do 2 annual NOFAs. We have a pre-application workshop so we can discuss the application, explain it, allow people to have an opportunity to answer questions so they're better equipped to actually submit an application. And we do provide, technical assistance. We have a frequently asked question section on the website, so everybody has access to the same information, to any questions that are posed to us. And they're all done via email, and it's proven to be very effective. And we keep a running tab of all the FAQs from all the NOFAs that we've done to date. So people have access to that information. It may have been a question that was posed in the past and answered. So we've completed 5 NOFAs so far. And through those, we've awarded $18 million in block grant, home, and NSP funding. A total of 56 development projects have received awards. And once these projects are completed, 538 housing units will be finished. Of that, 293 were new construction, and 245 are rehab. And total, our $18 million leverage another $103 million in other funding sources. So we got a total of $121 million in total development costs. Okay. Next thing I want to talk about is the Healthy Home Repair Program. So,
Excuse me.
yes, sir.
If you don't mind, so the housing production, where is that in the exhibit then?
It is on page A4. It's in the second section. It'll say for sale and rental, rehabilitation, and new construction of housing. So 3.9 million.
I'm on page
A4.
A4. Oh, 3.9 million, okay, I found that. For sale and rental rehabilitation. How does that tie together with 18 million in block grant and home and NSP awarded?
That's just a snapshot of what we've done in the 5 NOFAs that we've had to date.
So that's 5 years worth, is that?
No, it's 2.5 years. We do 2 NOFA rounds per year. So we just had our summer NOFA awards we made at the end of July, so that was our 5th NOFA. So we did 2 in 14, 2 in 2015, and 1 so far in 2016. So just giving you some historical information of how this process is working.
Okay, so there's 2 of those, so that's 2.5 years, the 18 million is
Yes, sir.
2.5 years worth. Okay. And then when we're doing those, do we combine those typically with tax abatement for the developments then?
It's up to the developer whether or not they request tax abatement. We don't require
Okay.
that they do.
Do we somewhere coordinate or have a kind of a master list of what we're doing through block grant and also through MHDC funding and other sources for affordable housing?
We can get that information to you, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to start kind of getting an idea of, all the resources that are available through federal, state agencies and, so forth that are specifically targeted for, affordable housing.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
So the Healthy Home Repair Program is the next thing we'd like to talk about. So that program was centralized per the HUD model in 2014. The program partners are CDA, the Building Division, and Home Services. CDA is responsible for the application processing and the oversight of the program. And the Building Division does the inspections, they do lead testing, and they monitor the work during construction. And then Home Services, who's our nonprofit partner, does the construction management, the loan closings, they bid the work and process payments to the contractors. So just to give you some accomplishments that we've done, since we took over the program centralized at HUD's request in 2014, we've actually reduced the waiting list, the citywide waiting list by 68%. And we've had a net reduction of almost 1,800 people, or almost 1,900 people off the waiting list. But we still get a lot of applications every year, and we're sending those out regularly. So we have actually sent out over 400 applications so far in 2016. That's calendar year. Just to give you some background on historic information, in 2015, we closed 278 loans. We're projecting 320 loans for 2016. Last year, we committed $3.1 million. We're projecting $3.8 million this year. And our accomplishments that we're projecting for this year will be a 40% increase in the activity from the first year of centralization, and nearly 100% increase from the last year when the program was decentralized. Currently, we have loan commitment letters out to 120 homeowners, so those folks will, most of them will come in and close the loan before the end of the year. That's another $1.5 million that we're projecting to commit. We've completed repairs to 112 homes. We have 114 that are currently under construction, and we have 257 projects under construction management, meaning they're being inspected, scopes of work are being developed, and they're out for bid. All right. The next, we'll talk about the minor home repair programs that we're funding this year.
Question about that.
Sure.
Regarding the Healthy Home Repair, the centralized program here, I'm listening to your reports there, but do you have actually any data that you can provide as far as what houses, how many houses got done last year, where that list is,
Yeah.
how many people still on the list, how long they've been waiting? Do you have raw data for us?
Yeah, I can get that for you. We definitely have access to that. We can get that right away.
Okay, appreciate it.
Okay, so I just want to write that down. Okay, so the minor home repair programs are limited to seniors, and HUD defines a senior as being 62 and older. And not only do they have to be seniors, but they have to be low to moderate income. Senior Home Security is a program we fund on a citywide basis. The Urban League is a new program that we're funding this year. We used to fund the Urban League in the past, but they're going to do a minor home repair program, and to the extent possible, they're going to couple their weatherization program with their minor home repair program so they can do more on those individual houses. And the weatherization program is not a program that's funded by CDA, but it's funded by the Department of Energy. Harambe, they provide free tuck pointing to low and moderate income homeowners, and they actually work in 20 north side neighborhoods. And then finally, the Carondelet Community Betterment Federation, and they're working in the Carondelet neighborhood.
So how many organizations are doing minor home repair?
4.
4. And all of them geography-based? They do certain areas, or is it?
2 are citywide, Senior Home Security and the Urban League.
Okay.
And then Harambe, which is geography based, but just 20 neighborhoods.
Harambe. Is that right? Harambe.
I'm sorry.
Swahili 101. It's Harambe.
Harambe. All right, got it.
The Urban League, okay.
So they're in 20 north side neighborhoods, and then the Carondelet Community Betterment Federation is just in the Carondelet neighborhood.
And were all these groups funded last year as well?
They
You said
all were
Urban
except the
League.
Urban League.
Okay, and so do you have, I guess, to my colleague from the 21st point, do you have numbers of sort of last year? How many minor home repairs did each organization make? How many people are still waiting on the list? Sort of how we judge the effectiveness of some of these groups?
Right, yeah, we can get that for you. And there's really not a waiting list for the minor home repair
Okay.
programs. We'll get those numbers to you.
So there's not a waiting list?
Not
So-
for the minor home repair.
So typically, how quickly do people get serviced?
They get serviced pretty quickly on those. It's, a lot of them have their own crews who go out and do the repairs. The only one that might have a bit of a waiting list is Harambe, because, there's a demand for those services.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, they might be working maybe at most 6 months. And then some of it's dependent on when the kids are in school. When they're back in school, they can't really, tough point, because by the time they get out of
Sure.
school, it's dark and that kind of stuff.
So when you say it doesn't take that long, do you mean like 30 days, 6 months?
No, usually less than 30 days for the
Oh,
minor
really?
home repair.
Oh,
And then finally, we're funding a down payment assistance program through Beyond Housing for first-time home buyers, and they provide down payment and closing cost assistance.
Could you speak a little bit more to that program?
Yeah, right. So, first-time home buyers defined by HUD as somebody who has not purchased a home or owned a home within the last 3 years. They have to be low to moderate income, and they will provide up to $3,500 that can be used for the down payment and closing costs. And they also have to go through a minimum of 16 hours of training. That's a HUD certified counseling requirement, and that program is available citywide.
Sorry, and is that a loan, or is it just a?
No, it's a 5-year forgivable loan.
It's a 5-year forgivable loan? Okay.
Any other questions on the housing programs?
as an information request, I'd like to get that, the contact information, or however constituents are supposed to contact those two organizations, Urban League and Senior Home Security.
Okay.
Any other questions on Exhibit A or the board bill for us? Okay, I want to thank you for giving us an opportunity to present on the board bill. If there are any other requests, please feel free to email us when you have them. Thank you.
Sorry, Alderman, if I may. I believe our colleague from the 28th made this request, but it would be really helpful to have, you know, in addition to sort of, not necessarily in Exhibit A, but probably on this, this long list here that corresponds with the map, you know, not only what was funded, what's being proposed for funding this year, but, you know, what did we fund last year, to sort of have a historical comparison.
Okay. Not sure if it would be the best for that particular list there, because there's lots of different sites for different activities.
Whatever list you think would be
Okay,
best.
okay.
Thanks.
That works. Any other requests?
Things I look at on this funding, well, I'm funding 10,000, 15,000, and 20,000. One of the things we used to look at in the federal system is you should operate an agency to come out of grant funding from the government. So if we could put something in place that establishes the opportunity for comprehensive grant writing from corporate entities and others and charitable foundations, and assist those agencies in becoming more self-sustaining. Because we don't know what year they're going to decide there will be no more block grant. That's the whole conversation on the federal level right now. And so we need to strengthen agencies, and many of them don't have the capabilities because they're just basically trying to figure out how to do the day-to-day, but that's a part of running an agency. They're gonna have to figure this out. And so if we can provide some of that, and most especially, be more collaborative in their, well, you do that. You do oversight on the operations, don't you?
We do. And the
Okay.
difficulty in helping with the grant writing is that that's not an eligible activity under HUD. We're actually precluded from funding grant writing. So,
Isn't that ridiculous?
yeah. So,
But just stay in this rut.
well, that's why we offered the capacity building classes, because we know our limitations on this end, not being able to help with grant writing. So we try to help strengthen the capacity, at least give them the awareness that they indeed need to pursue someone that can help with that.
Wow. That is such a shame. So you guys do the site visits that you require?
Yes.
Deliverable comprehensive reports to show what they're doing.
Right, and with new agencies, we actually go out and do an initial visit. We do risk assessments on all of our agencies.
Okay.
We do a technical assistance visit when they're new, and go out and kind of train them on how to operate a CDBG program. From there, we help them throughout the year. We have a monitoring visit with them in the fall, and if all's well, they get a glowing report, and they can proceed to the next year. But there are a few that have a few compliance issues, and we work with them to resolve those.
Well, I guess we'll never get to where we need to be. Because this is the part of keeping people informed. Stay with. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Madam Director, could you go through the limitations on, I guess I'm having trouble following your recording system here. There is a limitation on how much of the block grant money we can get for the, for use for services, is that right? What is it?
For public services, yes, and that is by far the area that we get the most applications on, is public service, and we have a cap on what we could spend.
So that would be, what, 20%?
19%.
19% of the 16 million, is that correct?
Right. We were grandfathered in at 19%. The federal government, the rule is 15%, but because we were doing 19% at the time that rule came in place, we were grandfathered in.
So I guess I'm a little confused about how you have this category, because you have total public services at 3 million.
Yes.
So 20% is, I guess that would be under, but then you have this total, that does not include this LRA board up.
It does not. Interim assistance is a separate eligible activity under the
What
federal
is a
rules.
separate,
Excuse me?
what's a separate eligible?
Interim assistance. Interim assistance with LRA board up. That's a separate category of eligibility. There's no cap on that.
And what is considered, how is that different than public service then?
Interim assistance is really maintaining properties that are awaiting future development. And so that program handles the board up and other maintenance issues on LRA properties.
Okay. And then could you explain what's, for everyone's sake, what's going on with the commercial district program then?
Sure. We've heard a lot of, not complaints, but desires to improve the neighborhood commercial district program. And we've heard it enough that we want to start a committee to look at the program and look at best practices across the country to see how we can improve it. I think there are areas that we can improve in the facade program, and we're going to work closely with Michelle, who's over the program, SLDC, a committee of CDA members, just to research the eligibility of any ideas that we come up with. And then I also encourage and invite you all to participate as well. This year, they were funded a little bit lower on their administrative piece, and that's because they have quite a bit of money left over from prior years. We're requiring that they use that money and use that money up this year for next year.
Keep dividing everybody
I think that's one of the issues that we need to look at.
A new business opening, and you deny them the window application for signage, or you deny them certain things that are just a part of a business opening, that it makes no common sense anymore. where we've gone with this. And so, as far as I'm concerned, shut it down. If you don't want to, if they don't want to allow the money for the businesses, just reallocate it to something else. But right now, I'm furious with that program.
If you don't mind, can we meet and talk about some of those issues? Because those are things that I'm not aware of. They do have money from prior years that's sitting in a pot, and they're going to have to spend that money, or it'll be reallocated.
Just for,
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
just for clarification purposes, the request I probably hear more from most aldermen is help getting them to develop a plan for an area. So kind of engaging the community and developing a plan and start trying to, implement it. Now that planning process, and we had kind of an agreement with your predecessor that you hired, I guess, Brian Taylor.
Robinson, yes.
Brian Robinson to assist in that, and he's been doing a little bit of that around town. But we can't spend more money on planning because that would be considered a service, is that right?
It's considered an administrative line under the administrative cap. So we've got two caps, public service and then administrative and planning.
Okay, and what's the administrative cap?
20%.
And where is that reflected in this then?
It's reflected on page, towards the end of the exhibit.
What?
Starting on page A6.
Oh,
The question,
okay.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Thank you. Alderman from the 21st, did you
Yeah.
have something?
So I guess the frustration here is that though we have a lot of papers here, I don't feel like we have enough information to accurately evaluate how we're spending block grant funds, both for the upcoming fiscal year and our previous fiscal year. So, so I guess to ask some specific requests, and also just in a general spirit, so you know what I'm asking for, you can also maybe give us stuff that I don't specifically ask for here. But what I'm trying to get an idea of is, so for instance, on this document, just having the dots without having the amounts, or having anything that correlates to this document isn't very helpful. So just looking at it, even not having all the information here, but like in my ward, for instance, and I'm not going to pick on anybody else's ward, let's just pick on my ward. In my ward here, I've got 5 dots. But as I just try to go between all these documents and figure out what each dot actually represents in terms of dollars, it looks like those 5 dots total less than 1/2 of another dot over in another ward. So in order for us to actually evaluate like where the money is going, I got to have some numbers that correlate with that.
And that's fine. There's a lot of different factors in how money is allocated. If it's a new program, and I do believe there are a couple of new programs in your area, we limit that amount because they have to learn the rules associated with the CDBG program. What we found is that with new programs specifically, it takes them 6 months to really ramp up to get their program and policies in place to utilize the funding. So if you do find that in your ward there are smaller dollar amounts, it could be for that very reason.
Well, you got one listed as a new program that isn't a new program. So this thing that's
It's probably a new activity. Maybe not a new organization.
It says recommended review of new recommended activities, and so this thing related to the safety initiative.
Yeah, that's a new activity. Yes.
So how does that differ from the previous activity?
They'll have different reporting requirements, different measures, different metrics that they will have to adhere to. And if there are any compliance issues from previous activities, those will also be taken into consideration.
Okay, so I mean, this new activity sounds remarkably like the previous activity, which I think this time last year I called a waste of money. And
no, it's a crime prevention program and not a landlord training. If we're talking about the same thing.
So this one yeah, okay, we'll discuss that one.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so that, and then relating to the facade program. So I don't know if I'm missing some documentation on that, but it would be helpful to, for instance, have a list of the businesses or the addresses or the zip codes or whatever of who received it and how much it was received last year. Because I also have frustration that, you know, not many businesses are getting that in my commercial districts. So it'd be good to see how that has been spent in the past. And I think there was another question too. Does that program get any other funding besides block grant?
No. They require some businesses to leverage the block grant, but generally speaking, no.
Okay. Okay. And then the similar request related to the home repair program, finding out where projects have been done, how much has been spent on each of those projects, so then we can do our own analysis.
Okay.
And if you want to prepare a map for each one of those for the home repair program and the block grant fund, I mean the facade program, that'd be helpful as well.
We're at the mercy of one graphic designer, so hopefully he'll have time between now and Wednesday.
That is
but-
one more than we have, so,
So I think we should be able to handle it. But
thank you.
In the spirit of full disclaimer, I just looked at this. There are a number of dots in the 17th Ward, and for the record, there is one legacy dot in there, which is the Herbert Hoover program, which is the one that used to be funded when we had the ability to fund those from our ward. All the rest of the dots that are in the 17th Ward, I had absolutely nothing to do with, so I don't know.
Got Rich over there.
Please, you know,
well, one thing that we tried to do is to show, in 2014 and 15, we really just showed the dots of where organizations operated their business. We really took it a couple years ago to the next level and showed where they're actually having their activities. So what you'll find is that in the 17th Ward, they're at a library doing tax credit assistance, or there might be different dots for different public schools that are on there as well. So.
Yeah, and I noticed there was a dot in my ward that's actually in the 28th Ward, something to do with Schlafly Library, so it's across the street from mine. But anyway, I just want to make sure that everybody understands that other than Herbert Hoover, which was a legacy funding, that was something that was left over that funds a youth program from many years now. I have not lobbied or worked to try to get any other funding in the ward.
Chairman.
It's really just a matter of providing services at a public location,
Yes.
though. There's no
Yeah.
funding for the Schlafly Library.
Right.
I understand. I'm just
Absolutely.
trying to.
Absolutely.
I'm teasing you.
Okay, good. I'll try to be more humorous.
But now that you're running for mayor, you have to think about the whole city, Alderwoman. Okay. Are there any other questions?
I have one comment
Okay.
very quickly. Ms. Green, I wanted to share with you that I appreciate your hard work.
Thank you.
My frustration level just comes from, I am in this mode of just trying to get so much done so fast. And unfortunately for me, these kinds of things just bog down systems. So it's not about you. And then because we no longer have any input at all with block grant, we can't even write a letter of support to an agency. So we know that when we get this, we had nothing to do with it. So it requires a lot of understanding. An agency doesn't even have to have a conversation with us. So it just comes from frustration.
Right. And, you know, it also has a little bit to do, too, with just how they write the grants. What we find is that people that do good programming don't always write the best grant. And so when you're in the competitive transparency process and you're rating applications, you can see that they're doing good work, but they're not relaying the information. And that's the kind of the dichotomy of what we deal with. We know that there's good work being done, but we have to follow the HUD rules, which require certain things.
All right, but thank
So,
you.
Quick question.
Alderman.
I noticed, and it's on the map up there, that we are funding, I don't know if we're funding St. Louis Public Schools or someone else's programs that are taking place in St. Louis Public Schools. Of course, we want the schools to have funding. My comment was going to be, if we are funding programs in St. Louis Public Schools, since they just got a 20% tax increase that will be on the tax bills this December, you know, hopefully then maybe that would fund some of this and we could use this to do other things. 20% is a pretty big tax increase.
Right. We're actually funding kind of their after-school services through the Family Support Center. So that would be working on truancy prevention.
Really important.
Some
I just
some
wonder,
medical
will they
services.
be doing any of that themselves you know?
I could check with them. We're giving them a smaller amount this year because they have money to spend from prior years. So we're going to allow them to use next year as well.
Okay, thank you.
Was there initial comment down here? Was there an Alderman, I thought the 7th, Alderman from the 7th, did you have? No, you're all. Okay, then, and you've got all your information requests down. You want to summarize those before we leave? I was kind of making notes of them, and then I got distracted with a couple side conversations here, but.
You want to come up and summarize, make sure we got it right? Okay.
I would say we have a request for, came up a couple times, a map or something to show funding and location.
Yeah.
So I got that down. A request for, I think, something about affordable housing and resources for affordable housing.
A list of the projects.
Yeah, or a list of healthy home repair projects and data for those. Contact information for Urban League and Senior Home Services. What was proposed in prior years and then versus what was proposed in current years. And then I guess maps for neighborhood commercial district and home repair, as well as what was done by some of the agencies in prior years.
List of businesses for a facade.
Yeah, oh, map for home repair. Yeah. Yeah, does that sound like, I got everybody?
I hope so. I'm not sure. Okay.
Okay, all right. Well,
Great, thank you all. We'll consider today adjourned, and you'll try to get those over to everybody as soon as possible so that we're not, yeah, okay, great.
I'm also more than happy between now and next Wednesday to meet individually if there's anything that people want to address and discuss or have more questions about, in particular, lead to their awards that they serve.
Great, thank you.